All right, so the third edition of Clash of Steel, the third season or third episode, if you want to call it that. The Global Uprising is out, and this being 2025 and things being different, we have received downloads of the books on the Battlefront community website just before we got the product. So if you have your hands on the physical product, that's one thing. But for those who don't have it yet, like me, we have these downloads. Now, that's another thing I'm going to bring up. Since we have these downloads that are on the website, I will be going through these and you will be able to see unedited point values, whatever. These are available on the Battlefront website. So go there and download these and view those. My video is for news and for the reviews. When you're done with this, please go over to the Battlefront site and download those. I guess that's what the company desires, is to have you on their site. So go do that. As for me right now, I do want to review Clash of Steel. So I would have preferred to have the cards in my hand because then I can have the point values be a mystery. But with these books in my hand, the PDFs, I'm going to have to do it this way. So here I have literally the PDF reader up, and we're going to go through the PDFs. Starting with the British forces because I feel they have the best go. I'm going to go with the Soviets next because Soviet players whine. Then I have the German booklet, which is, I have it next just because Germans are popular, and they do get good offerings. They do. And then we have the American booklet last, which weirdly enough, that's one I like the most. In Clash of Steel, I have a lot of Soviet forces, but I'm really an American player at heart. I really like the American forces, and I love using the experimental American tanks. But I'm going to handle them last because everybody else kind of wants to see the other three books instead. Or they need to see it because some of those books win harder than others. Like the British forces. So the British forces for Global Uprising. So this is the final iteration of the British battle group. It still has the same restrictions, so no restrictions have changed. 1 headquarters, 2 to 6 core, up to 2 support units. We're looking good as far as headquarters options for this. That's one reason I like to say this list is kind of a winner. Look at all that. You get 6 different choices. Heavy tanks, medium tanks, light tanks. What would you like to go with? You have 2 different versions of artillery sniper to go with. And you have the Chieftain. We still get the Comet Reese troop, which is good. I would recommend bringing at least one of those, if not 2 of those, and have it just take up your entire support slot. Though you might want to bring other support options from the past. None of them are really as good as what we have here. Because of the way this list is structured, if you want the Tortoise, it will have to be a support option. This is a modern unit for all the new stuff in the 1960s. So let me go through the Chieftain and the FV215 and compare them against the Conqueror. The Chieftain. Oh my god, that's a great tank. 17 front armor, beats most of their tanks in the game. Anti-tank 21, beats most of their tanks in the game. Range of 48 inches, beats most of their tanks in the game. Has both stabilizers and accurate. So congratulations, nothing but good news there. Firepower 2+, also good. Tactical 10 is average. Cross-country dash of 16 is semi-average. Cross value of 2+ is fantastic. It has infrared for those night games. The Chieftain is just a good tank. It's even better than one we see in Team Yankee, because I'm pretty sure the one we saw in Team Yankee was a 2-1 instead of a 2-2 with stabilizers. This is definitely an updated version of the Chieftain that does better. I like it. And if you didn't think the British were doing good, keep in mind this has charioteers in the core, so you don't need to just waste all your points on big expensive chieftains. 51 points takes up more than half your force. Just a little bit more than half your force, but let's be honest. If you really want to get something else expensive, you can fill in the rest of your points with those Comet Recon and the charioteers. The Centurions are still there, so you have a good medium choice as well. Very few other forces have something that can stop it. Of course, there's other things that could stop it, but you know. Then I'm going to talk about the FV215, because the FV215, oh mama. The Conqueror has more front armor and 8 inches more range. This thing can choose to shoot and move if it wants to, but it's considered slow firing. Who cares? That's a nice little touch, but it's just a backup plan. Your plan is the same plan you would have as if you were running Conquerors, which, in my opinion, is technically superior because the Conqueror is also accurate. And to have an accurate 40-plus range gun with high anti-tank, 21 on the Conqueror, 24 here. Auto firepower is a very nice touch. Heat is a very nice touch, so there's not going to be any long-range armor bonuses. The cross value of 2+, also very good. It's probably the most expensive tank in the game at 20 points per tank. But it wallops. If you get close to it, it can still defend itself rather well. Its side armor is pathetic, but then again, you have to have a weakness somewhere, I guess. It gets all of its strength from the fact that it can reach out and destroy something. 24 anti-tank, auto firepower, that's good. And you pay for it. A War of Unification list is there. They have the Operation Unthinkable list there. It really comes down to the fact that the British list doesn't really throw out anything old for all the new stuff. The Tortoise is kind of gone. If you really liked your old World War II British stuff, most of it's been replaced by new stuff. So you don't have the Centurion 1, you don't have the Churchill, you don't have any of that. But then again, who needs it at this point? You've got Centurions, you've got Charioteers, you've got all the big amazing toys that have just come out recently. The British are doing very good at Clash of Steel. And about the Soviet forces in global uprising, nothing has changed from what we'd expect. They're still on a 3+. Their skill is still a 5+. There's a few things here and there that are unique and interesting, but typically the Soviet forces still play like a horde force, except for now we have the option to go heavy if we want to, and we can make our heavy stuff work. One thing that's kind of notable is that some units have a minimum unit size of like 3, some have a minimum unit size of 5. So that really does determine what you get to bring with your force, because you can choose the minimum down on some heavier units, but some units are stuck at a standard 5 to bring your minimum size. Either way, the Soviet forces from Global Uprising are pretty Soviet. Looking at their shock group for Global Uprising, it's heavy-centric. The T-54-3, the production version of the T-54 essentially, not the prototype, is your medium tank and your cheapest tank at 4 points. It's essentially 20 points for a basic brick. In a 100-point game, each unit you bring is going to be 1/5 of your points. There you go. So you're probably going to want your headquarters unit be the IS-7 and then just go from there. But the T-10 works just fine. The other T-tanks work just fine too. The T-62 is actually worth noting because it has a smaller minimum than the T-54 does. Therefore, it's cheaper, and it can be used as a gun tank. I'm going to show you the T-62 and the T-10, and I'll talk about list building from there. Notice we get the SU-100 still as a support option. I would just recommend going all in on T-44 Scout tanks. The T-62, also known as the best tank of the Cold War to old war gamers that played old Cold War games. Almost everybody that played Soviets brought the T-62. And now the T-62 is here for us. So it's got infrared for those night games, but what really matters, if you ask me, is the fact that you can bring just 3 of them for 18 points, making it 2 points cheaper than a larger unit of T-54s. Yes, you get more T-54s. I recommend bringing some T-54s. But if you want to be a little bit cheap and you don't really worry about your body count as much, the T-62 will work. But its armor is the same. What you're paying for is an increase in anti-tank. And that's about it. You still get slow firing. Your vehicle still has horrible cross values. Still is hit on the 3+. And it's because you're finally getting anti-tank 19. The T-10 is really the champion of the new lists, and let me show you why. I don't see any slow firing there. Its halted rate of fire is still a 1, but I don't see any slow firing. Anti-tank 18 means it has increased from the Late War Leviathan's book by 3 points. Firepower 2+ is nice, Cross 3+ is nice, Cost Country Dash of 20 and Tactical of 10 matches what the IS-7 has. So with 12 side armor and a front 16, this is your King Tiger. If you are a Soviet player that wants a hero tank and you are whining about how expensive the IS-7 was for some reason, instead of just using it like a hero tank, you can get 3 of these for 29 points. Not bad, it's just a third of your list. In my opinion, it would make really good sense to bring a singular IS-7 as your commander, but also have 3 of these guys knocking around your force with some kind of heavy firepower that you can use to bolster your numbers. The T-54 being your numbers there. This is actually a really good list if you want to either play higher point values, or if your opponents are used to bringing heavier tanks, this is what you want to bring. Although I might recommend, using one of those support option units to bring some of the older stuff you could spam with. Who knows, right? This PDF does include the old War of Unification, includes the Operation Unthinkable. I honestly think that if you wanted to just play Soviets, the War of Unification force is good enough, and if you really wanted a T-62 or a T-10, you can bring them as support options. But all your real winners showed up here. You still get the heavier version of the T-54. You still get the lighter version of the T-54. You get those cheap assault gun batteries. You get T-44s. You get IS-3s. If you really want cheap and effective, most people have been reporting they've been winning games with IS-3s because it has a little bit of everything and master of nothing. Great tank for this game. So when it comes to playing the Soviets, all I got to say is that you kind of have to put behind the idea that you can be a smashing hero. You're supposed to be a horde army. And the only way you can get around that is if your opponents are also maxing out their heavy tanks, you can bring the newest list as your version of the heavy tank list. After all, you may just have a unit of 5 T-55s rolling around in there somewhere. You can roll into the flanks with and kill your enemy that way, while your IS-7s and T-10s are playing frontal guard against all their nasty incoming fire. I've been winning a lot with the Soviets, and it's mostly because the IS-7 is technically unconquerable. It's fast enough to move out of the way. It's hard enough to hit. It's got a rate of fire 2 while sitting still. That in and of itself is better than anything we have, even in the new options. The T-10 doesn't get that. The T-62 doesn't get that. All in all, the Soviet list is pretty much sitting in the same place it used to be, except we finally have an anti-tank 19 option running around, and we finally have an option that doesn't have slow firing running around. The German forces for Global Uprising are kind of in a similar position to what the British are in. I mean, they're doing good at this point. The medium armor that I really appreciated them having earlier in the game is kind of gone. And it's now a choice of either do you like your light stuff or do you like your heavy stuff? And I'm being literal about that. Let's just go take a look. So here's the German force for Global Uprising. And as we can see, you've got one of two choices. You can bring leopards. You can bring scorpions. Those are your light options. Or you could bring some version of the E100. And congratulations, you are now stuck in heavy Panzerville, or you're running with a light gun tank of some kind, with the scorpions and leopards actually being relatively equivalent to one another. I'm going to review the leopard and compare it against the scorpion. The Panther still being around as a scout troop is hilarious, because the fact we still get a medium/heavy tank from World War II as our scout troop, that sounds cool to me. I'm good with that. The Leopard is fun. And weirdly enough, it says it has a British gun. Okay. In game, the Leopard is quite a fun little vehicle. It is more lightly armored than the Panther. It is heavier armored compared to the Scorpion. 16 points for 2 of them. But you can bring, 3 of them in a unit just as well. You can bring up to 5, but it gets 2 shooting rate of fire, whether it's sitting still or moving, and it has no such thing as stabilizers or slow firing. It's also accurate when it sits still. The Leopard is quite the goosey little tank. It is the only tank in the game that I've seen that has a moving rate of fire of 2 that does not have any sort of penalty associated with that. Now the Leopard is sitting on an anti-tank 18. I'm used to it having like a 19 or 20, but then again, I guess that's the shell you get in the 1970s or 80s, right? Firepower 2+ is great, 40-inch range is great, but the rate of fire 2, no matter what you do, is amazing. I like that. With tactical 12, cross-country dash of 28, and a cross value of 2+, this tank is the most mobile tank in the game. Its only drawback is that it has very little armor, but honestly, at this point, who cares? If you're smart enough, you can pretty much hunt down other big tanks with impunity. The Scorpion is cheaper. The Scorpion does have a moving rate of fire of 1. Its anti-tank rating is the same. It pretty much is everything. Well, it does have longer range technically than the Leopard. The Leopard was sitting at 40. It has slow firing, which is a disadvantage. But the thing about this is that it's a great vehicle to put in an ambush. It's cheaper. It's not going to really win you a lot of battles, but point-wise, you might be able to sit on an objective first before the enemy does. Anti-tank 18 is nice, but it doesn't have any staying power in the armor department. I think that's what your heavier tanks are supposed to be for, but hey, you can't afford to bring hundreds of heavy tanks. That's not how the game works at all. The cross-country dash and cross value and tactical movement of this tank are all less than the Leopard, so the Leopard technically outclasses its vehicle in many different ways. But if you want the cheap option is still there. Also about the Scorpion, I've always thought the Scorpion model looked a little bit unwieldy with all of that mechanism for the gun sitting such a short distance behind the barrel. The barrels aren't that hollow. So I've always modeled it with a bit of a plastistrut to make the butt end of the breech sticking out farther. It just looks better in that regard. And you can probably bring it out to the edge of the rim there, and it would look pretty good. That's how I make my Scorpions. Although, I'll be honest with you, my Scorpions belong to other players now because I don't play Germans. Yet. The other big bad boy we get in the new set is the Jagdpanzer E100. It's actually cheaper than the British FV. It has one more anti-tank. It still has moving rate of fire, whatnot, but its range is shorter. Auto firepower, that's nice. Cross value 2+ is nice. Cross country dash of 16 is nice. This is a good tank, but it's so expensive. It's got great front armor. It's got great side armor, really, but it's so expensive. What, 17.5 points per tank? Yeah, that's my points wallet is suffering. It doesn't have heat. It does have accurate. It does kind of slow firing, so that's a bit of a problem. But then again, you have Leopards. Anybody who buys this new box set and is using the E100s and the Leopards in concert is not going to feel the pain as much as somebody who, for example, was playing the Soviet version. The Germans get great stuff this time around. As far as playing the Germans in Clash of Steel is concerned, I really prefer their first Operation Unthinkable list. Now, the Moss is a little bit unwieldy, but the thing is they had the King Tiger. And the King Tiger is still relevant. You can bring a King Tiger base list in this game and totally walk the dog with it. There's no other way to say it. It is good. And this new list shows that there is a bifurcation where you're going to have either really heavy stuff or you're going to have Leopards and Scorpions. Well, you have to stop and think about it. Yeah, the German tank design of this period was kind of reliant upon foreign exports for all their mediums, so you're not going to get patents in the you're not going to get patents in the German list here. And they haven't brought out like the E75 or the E50. Honestly, your idea of a medium tank, strangely as it is your Panther Scout Troop. That's your medium tank. So what if it doesn't have the gun? It's got the armor. You can handle a bit of a few things. Now, it's not greatly armored. In this game, you really need like 13 or more armor to really handle the stress of combat, considering everybody and their dog has a anti-tank 18 guns somewhere in their list. Yeah. Panther's armor is a little bit outdated, but still, it's the closest thing you have to a medium tank. Unless you just want to throw out the idea completely and be like, we're going to just skip around with Leopards and see how this turns out. After all, Leopards are fun. And the one thing I was thinking about was Leopard-oriented. American forces in Global Uprising are a little bit different from what they've had previously. There's been a formalized streamlining of their forces in the 1960s, according to the Clash of Steel game. Their forces pretty much played the same way they would if you're playing Checkpoint Charlie. But, I must say this, the American forces get their highest armor available, which is only a 1-point increase, but hey, it works, right? And you still have the option to bring something else as a support unit, although you have the Easy 8 recon units, which are probably a good idea to bring, because what do you have that's going to go out and grab objectives quick enough to start the game going in your favor soon enough to win the game? Let me go ahead and look at just the new tanks we have for Global Uprising and show you this new list. Ta-da! Look, there's homogeneity between the command and the core units. Easy 8 recon, and then you get to bring options from other things. The Doom Turtle is now a support option. All of those special T tanks we had, they're all support options now. Our only medium option left is the M48 Patton. 13 front armor, 16 anti-tank. That's what you have to go on. Not a bad choice for a medium tank, but let me just tell you, this Global Uprising force leans into that Patton. You're going to need them bring at least one unit of Pattons to serve as your medium, no matter what you're doing with your other bigger, heavier tanks. The M60 is nice, the T57 is nice, but you're going to need something like that. Also, the T57 and the M103 pretty much perform the same duty. This is the M60. It is America's King Tiger. It has one less front armor than a King Tiger and one more anti-tank. It's got an amazing cross value of 2+, and it's got infrared. This thing can tell King Tigers where to go. It's a pretty good unit. You can flank and spank anything on the board. Yes, anything. You can generally fight most other units, but with 15 front armor, you're not going to survive a lot of 20 anti-tank or more, so you're still going to want to play this like it's a tank and not like it's some kind of infinite death machine that can absorb all fire coming toward it. The M60 is relatively expensive what it does, which is why I honestly think with the new American list, you have to kind of weigh out your options. Then there's the T57. I see no reason why this can't just be your main tank that goes out and slaughters all the enemies. If your opponent brings nothing but E100s, you can bring a T57 force. I would honestly recommend mixing the T57 in with the other forces. It makes a great command tank, although it doesn't have the requirement to be an artillery sniper that the British super heavies do. If your opponent is foolish enough to play higher point games, you can bring this guy and then bring something else to cover out your bottom swarms. The reconnaissance Easy 8s, those will work just fine with this guy kicking around. I've been thinking about these American lists and what the new tanks mean, and honestly, the new tanks are pretty much the same things I'm going to be playing with in Checkpoint Charlie, so I might as well not bring those over into Clash of Steel, except for the T57. The T57 is essentially our experimental boy. You know, of all the lists we got, probably the best one, the one that has the most balance to it, is probably the War of Unification list. Yeah, we don't get 15 front armor. So what? We get plenty of 14, and almost all of our tanks have an anti-tank 18 or 19 or 20 gun. The good old-fashioned Operation Unthinkable is actually pretty good. And here's why. With the American forces, the new lists kind of feel like they're missing some things and gaining others. Like they're too average. And I might as well just take the forces I was going to play in Checkpoint Charlie and just use those. But if I really want to go back to the idea of playing with experimental tanks and having all kinds of interesting stuff going on, those T-28 assault guns, mixing those up with the T-29s and having Chaffies as one support option, and then as my other option, I can take some T-57s. T-34s would kind of be, a bit more of the same. Have all your tanks look identical. You can do T-29s, T-30s, T-34s. Ha ha ha. I'm thinking America is kind of in a spot where they have to work hard. We don't get anything handed to us for free. But throughout our history, we've had a lot of good guns. The new force is different. I'm looking at what's in front of me right now. I don't think any of these options here from Operation Unthinkable even show up in Global Uprising. They just don't show up. So the sensible middle of the ground force is this one. You can bring T-34s as your heavy snipers. You can still bring your T-28s as your tanks. They're taking all the major blows. You've got some medium options like the Pershing or the Patton. You don't get 15 front armor, but you get everything else. You get a 17 in there if you really need heavy armor. That's better than 15 if you ask me. You still get the Easy 8 recon. That's nice. So honestly, the Americans are stuck at a point where you're either going to be playing a brand new force out of Global Uprising, or you're going to be going back to playing your old forces, because your old forces can still accomplish the job. You just have to think differently. And that's how you'll play American, because in the end, we aren't as good as everybody else is. Our stuff is a little bit behind the curve. Then again, what was our experimental tank during the 1960s? Kind of wonder about that. So Clash of Steel has kind of come to a close. I don't know if they're going to make more chapters worth of Clash of Steel with whatever expansions they plan on, but I can tell you for sure that it's been fun. I've played enough of this game that I can tell you that Clash of Steel has its place as kind of this strange little one-off fantasy game that Battlefront made, yet there's a lot of people who play it pretty seriously. I mean, we don't buy this many tanks for a nothing game. This game meant something to us, and we're enjoying the hell out of it. I wish I could have had a much more concise comparison of like the big fat leviathans at the end. I'll put a few notes at the very end of this video saying what I think. But for the most part, let me just say that Clash of Steel has been a fun ride, and for all we've gotten out of it, it's good. I am not going to complain in the long run. Although there's a lot of things where I look at it, it's like, I'd rather do this and this and this. But then again, you know, the need of the game comes up and it's like, no, you're going to play the game this way. And so I do. But in any case, thank you very much for watching this video. And hopefully you can continue playing Clash of Steel for years to come. May the dice roll ever in your favor.